Welcome. My name is Don Davis. I'm the Editor-in-Chief at Internet Retailer, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. The topic is innovative disruption in retailing. There's a lot of it going on, and our speaker will be giving you some ideas about how you can turn it to your advantage. Our speaker is David Geisinger, Head of Mobile and Retail Innovation at eBay Enterprise. After David speaks, we'll take your questions. You can ask questions at any time using the dashboard on your screen, and the next day or two, everyone on the call will get an email with instructions on how you can obtain today's slides, as well as a link to the presentation you can share with colleagues. Before David begins, I'd like to give a few examples of some of the changes going on in retailing. The first thing to note is that e-commerce is growing much faster than stores, but that Amazon, the biggest online retailer by sales, is growing even faster than e-commerce, and that hasn't changed in 2015. But that doesn't mean that the story in retailing is all about Amazon. Retailers with stores are using their stores to offer greater appeal to appeal in new ways to shoppers. For example, the number of top 500 retailers offering buy online, pick up in stores went from 51 in 2013 to 63 last year. And retailers are trying lots of other ways to use their stores, such as Gap's reserve online for in-store pickup. They hold the garment for 2 days, so you know it will be there. Many more retail chains are shipping online orders from stores, so they're less likely to be out of stock online. They're also giving employees mobile devices they can use to let a shopper place an online order if the store is out of the item that she wants. We're also seeing a lot of very cool mobile apps from some of the biggest store-based retailers like Target and Walmart. These apps frequently offer consumers discounts they can claim immediately. Several of them also tell the shopper exactly where in the store she can find items on her wish list, which is really useful when you're going to a store like Walmart or Home Depot. And this is having an impact. As you can see, store-based retailers are pretty much holding their own in terms of online growth with Amazon. These are figures from last year's fourth quarter, when Dick's Sporting Goods actually exceeded Amazon growth in the fourth quarter of last year. And the holiday season that's about to start is not going to be all about Amazon or all about the web. As you can see from this Deloitte survey from last fall, consumers plan to shop lots of places for holiday gifts. The web is the single most cited place at 45%, but discounters like Walmart are right behind, and then there are many other kinds of stores that are going to see lots of traffic in the next few months. And consumers are shopping online with many types of devices, which makes things even more complicated. This is a study from Demandware based on its client data, and it shows that in terms of traffic to websites, the computer is declining slightly, and smartphones are accounting for a larger share of visits. But the even bigger change is in how consumers buy. The percentage of online sales from smartphones in the U.S. is up 58% over last year. ComScore has also noted a similar increase in consumers buying on their phones, and ComScore has attributed that to retailers providing better mobile sites and apps and the larger screens of smartphones today. And of course, consumers are bringing their smartphones into stores and using them in all kinds of ways. The number one way is to read product reviews, according to this recently released UPS study, but they compare prices, look for other places where they might buy what they want, contact their friends for advice, they even place orders on their smartphone from right in the store. No surprise, really. We've all probably done many of these things ourselves. There are plenty of other changes afoot, but you get the picture. The disruption is happening whether you like it or not, and innovation is a way to turn this to your advantage, and that's what we'll be discussing today. As I said earlier, we'll be hearing from David Geisinger, Head of Mobile and Retail Innovation at eBay Enterprise. After David speaks, we'll take your questions. You can ask any questions anytime using the dashboard on your screen. And as I said before, next day or two, everyone on the call will get an email with instructions on how to get today's slides. With that, I will turn the presentation over to David Geisinger of eBay Enterprise.
Wonderful. Thank you, Don. David Geisinger from eBay Enterprise. I head up retail and mobile innovation, as Don mentioned. You know, our responsibility at eBay Enterprise is really trying to build next generation technology that provides retailers and consumers the ability to sort of change the game and how they engage and how they relate to one another. A few things that I would like to sort of set the stage with before I go into any slides here are a couple things. One, innovation doesn't need to be expensive. There's always been this this common belief that innovation costs lots of money and it takes lots of time, and we need a big budget for it. When the reality is that there are many things that you can do from an innovation perspective that don't cost a lot, and we'll talk about some of that. Second, innovation doesn't need to be difficult. Again, we get into these situations where we feel like we need to overcomplicate or get into some analysis paralysis, because the idea of being innovative implies being creative, and creative implies being different. But that doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be difficult. And then the last thing is that innovation doesn't always need to be technical. So again, I think the word innovation has historically been attributed to technology innovation. And we hear about it all the time. We see it whether we're talking about Apple and their information from yesterday, or on the innovations that they've generated, or we spend time on Kickstarter and we look at the innovations, which tend to be product focused. Innovation doesn't need to be technical. It doesn't even need to be product focused. Innovation can start in the business process. It can actually be part of your people. And so when you think about the traditional people, process, and technology, innovation can actually span any one of those. Okay. So in terms of consumer revolution, as all of us are consumers, we all recognize the fact that we're more demanding than we've ever been in terms of the retail experience. We're really driving that change. And so I'm sure there's a number of you folks on the webinar today that are on the retail side, on the technology side, but we're all consumers. And we all know that when we enter a store today, we are armed typically with more information than the associates have or the brands have. We have our cell phones, we have our iPads, we have other types of devices that allow us to research and find information about not only the products that brand carries, but products that may be available at other brands. And that immediately puts the associates and the brands at a disadvantage because they don't have that information at their fingertips. And as consumers, we really want immediate action. Technology enables that type of impulsiveness. Because we have that device with us all the time, our device is probably the most prevalent thing in our lives. We travel with it, we eat with it, many of us sleep with it. It's in our meetings, it's everywhere. Because it's at an every moment access, the impulsiveness to use it, whether it's during a shopping experience or before you enter a store, is critical. And the whole concept of what we want, when we want, where we want, and how we want it is happening more now today than ever. And part of that is, again, because of the fact that time in our minds is even more critical. In some cases, consumers are now being referred to as the impatient generation. There's that expectation that not only will things happen quickly, but it needs to be relevant. No longer are we willing to accept a long conversation or engagement on areas of focus on products that aren't relevant to the consumer. And then last, but very different from what most people talk about, is brands need to be loyal to their customers' needs and connect with these consumers during what we call these me moments. And me moments aren't necessarily shopping moments. They could be moments, whether it be while you're watching a television program and the efforts that many have gone through in terms of interactive TV. And we did some work at eBay on that over the past few years around curating content tied to television programming. Very innovative, right? Or tying social impact. So, a number of brands are engaging more in social entrepreneurship or areas of philanthropy that tie their brand to people's personal needs and desires, those me moments. Some interesting statistics are, that 50% of shoppers actually have no idea what they want when they enter a store. So that's that browser category. And so what a perfect opportunity as a brand to leverage innovation by providing associates with access to information about those consumers, help guide them in a direction that may yield a sale versus allowing those consumers to sort of travel blindly. 93% can't find the right store associate to help them find an item. That's a huge problem, right? So that's where the proliferation of self-service technologies. So Home Depot does a great job of allowing you to find the product using their mobile app, and it tells you exactly the bay, exactly the shelf that product is on, and whether there's inventory in stock. 82% of smartphone users turn their phone to influence a purchase decision while in store. So this goes back to that first piece, which is consumers are armed with this great wealth of data on that smartphone that they're looking to ratings and reviews. They're looking to Pinterest. They're looking to other social environments like Facebook to determine whether they buy and where they buy. So going back to that sort of concept of me moments, we're moving more from e-commerce to e-commerce. So not only are we looking at the impatient generation, we're looking at Generation Z. The interesting part about Generation Z is that Generation Z is the generation that grew up knowing nothing other than the fact that Google has existed. And so there are actually people who are consumers in the marketplace now that never knew a day when Google didn't exist or eBay didn't exist. Right? These are those digitally native folks. They're more comfortable with smartphones than using their landline. They prefer tablets over magazines. Right? Many of other generations have transferred to that, but the new generation is committed to that. They desire that more personal customer service. They expect associates to know about their products, have access to those products, and know about the brand. And that they actually prefer help from an in-store associate. Right? And the reason they prefer help from an in-store associate is because there's an expectation that those associates will provide more relevance. On the flip side, there's also a large segment of the population that prefers self-checkout because they want speed. It goes back to that concept of efficiency. Right? They want to be able to move quickly through the checkout process and don't want to get bogged down in long lines or interactions at a traditional POS. And some are even willing to shop completely in a store that's automated. So there are many groups out there that have talked about automation of stores, and organizations like Pointer, and most recently Macy's has done some work around automating the distribution of requested items while in a fitting room. And us at eBay Enterprise with Rebecca Minkoff are doing it similar within their fitting rooms and allowing consumers to interact with associates directly through a fitting room mirror to request items be brought to them so that it's faster and it's more relevant. 90% would actually return to a store where they were helped by a knowledgeable associate. That's a huge number. And the investment or the innovation that's disruptive there is providing the associates with access to that information. The retailers have the information. You know what your customers have purchased. You know where they've purchased. You know how much they've spent. Putting that information in the hands who are engaging these consumers every single day is what will differentiate retail in the future. The idea of experiential commerce is talked about a lot. But the reality is that retail doesn't do a good job of practicing this. Today's consumer is not focused around simply the item itself or acquiring new clothes, but really wants the experience. And so when we see people enter into the Rebecca Minkoff store and engage with a digital wall or connected glass or the fitting room, or when you see people interacting with these experiences at Macy's, or even the mobile application for a place like Home Depot or Target now using some of their some beacon technology. The idea is that how are these people working with the brand or engaging with the brand is through experiences. So here's a couple ideas. Would retail stop doing? Focus less on how to extract consumer data. There's enough data. Retail already has enough data. Retail doesn't even know what to do with the data that they have. Right? It's analysis paralysis. Right? So collecting more data just adds to that mountain of information that already exists. That's not to suggest that you shouldn't find new ways to do it, but the advice is to stop doing it until you know how to leverage the information that you already have collected. Start designing stores around, stop designing stores around products. So what do stores do? They're designed to sell products. But if customers are looking for more experiences, shouldn't retail start thinking about how to start designing their stores around the consumer versus the products themselves? What should you think about for tomorrow? So moving forward, a little bit longer term. Be thoughtful, but not slow. Don't get into analysis paralysis. Go back to the 3 things that I said at the beginning. Innovation doesn't have to be expensive, doesn't have to be hard or take a long time, and it doesn't always have to be technical. There are small steps that you can take. And create unobtrusive connected experiences. Don't force people into a situation where they have to be engaged or engage the brand. Allow them to interact. Allow them to touch a wall or to start a process by using their mobile phone. Allow them to either turn the experience on or turn the experience off. And what can retail start doing today? Connect to consumers' non-digital identities. Don talked about how much shopping will occur online in the next year, and he also talked about how much shopping will occur offline. And it was pretty much a 50-50 split. So what that tells you is that most consumers aren't solely digital individuals. They're not solely digitally focused. They have lives outside of their homes, albeit it may seem minimal as you walk down the street and see 99% of the people staring at their phones as they walk. But the reality is that what we do every day, or what most of us do every day, is interact with other people, whether it be in a work setting, whether it be in a home setting, we're driving our car, right, we're on the bus. We're engaged in some non-digital experiences, volunteering, our kids' activities, and so on. So how do we find a way as retailers to engage customers or simply identify with those types of consumers? I mentioned before, design stores around customers and not products. Right? You'll see in a lot of brands now the idea of pop-up shops or a store within a store where they've created a curated experience either tied to a particular activity or event that attracts individuals who are interested in that particular experience. The products are secondary. The products sell because they're tied to experience. That's the key. And then make it real. Right? Don't be fake. Right? Don't try and be something you're not. Right? Use your brand and the power of your products to put yourselves in the hands of a consumer and make it real for them. You know, on the right here, I think it's fairly straightforward, but happy customers lead to increased sales. Right? And then increased sales leads to more investment, and then you can reinvest those dollars in the beginning. So this goes back to innovation doesn't have to be expensive. Fluid commerce. Consumers' lives are fluid, and so should retail. Right? We're always on the move. We're hyper-connected, and we're more preoccupied than anything before. In fact, statistics show that you very rarely finish anything. Right? 90% of multiple device owners switch between screens to complete tasks. So think about it. And this is where the idea of omnichannel is so important. And one area of disruptive innovation is the concept of universal cart. So here I am in my office today, and I'm browsing the web, and I find this great pair of jeans that I'm interested in purchasing. And I'm looking at them, and I put them in my cart, and then I look at my watch, and I realize, oh my goodness, I'm late. I need to pick up my son from school. And so I shut my computer, and I run out the door. And I pick up my son from school, and I'm driving home, and I pass by the store that I was browsing online earlier. And I have a few minutes. My son's not too upset with me for stopping, so we stop. We walk in the store. I engage an associate. The associate pulls up my profile, and there in my cart in store on their digital cart in store are the jeans that I had put in my online cart in the office. They quickly ask if I'm interested in purchasing them. I say yes. I buy them. I'm out the door. Fast, efficient, relevant. The inverse could happen as well, where I'm in a store, I'm late for a meeting, the associate puts it into my universal cart, I go online at home that night, and I complete the purchase there. Ability to adapt to social experiences and connect with all aspects of a consumer's life, and we talked about that before, things that retail should start doing today, right? Making it real, connect to their non-digital identities. Here's an interesting piece of information that came from Google, and this is around the 12-month growth of product reviews on YouTube. So I don't know how many of you have either done this yourselves or have young kids that do this, but there's this growing, massively growing trend of using YouTube for sharing and viewing product information. So YouTube has seen 72% growth over the past 12 months around this concept of sneaker pickup. And this is essentially people who share their new sneaker buys. So sneakers are one of those areas that it's a huge fan base, and people are quick to share their new purchases, and people are quick to view what people bought. First impressions. So there are people on YouTube that make millions of dollars a year simply by providing their first impressions on products new to the market, particularly in the toy category. 68% increase in growth. 50% increase in product reviews. Again, people focus solely on giving product reviews, and these aren't consumer reports, right? This is me, this is you, giving our first-hand, real-life view as a consumer of the products. And then 47% growth in this area called haul. And haul is essentially, imagine showing all my purchases. Right? So look at what I bought today. I went shopping on Newbury Street in Boston, or Michigan Ave, and I'm at the Stanford Mall, and I bought all these things. Literally, people are sharing their entire purchases, and they've seen a 47% growth. And the viewing statistics are off the charts. So what's the value exchange, right? Because retail really does require a little bit of a quid pro quo economy, right? Retail needs to give a little, consumers want a little, consumers need to give a little, and retail wants a little, right? So almost half of people done in this particular survey said that consumers are actually comfortable with retailers collecting personal information when shopping online if the experience that they're provided is more personalized. So using recommendation engines, using that idea of past product purchase, and using analytics and data to drive that personalized experience. 58% of consumers are willing to share their personal measurements and sizes in exchange for more personalized recommendations on future purchases. So it's that, it's that sort of custom tailor approach, right? And Gilt does a great job of this. So when I go on Gilt and I purchased a pair of shoes, and I'm a size 12, and they say, are you interested in that shoe? Yes, I am. Well, now on future experiences that I have on my mobile device or on the web, they curate a section called Choose Your Size. So I know that when I go to that category, that all the shoes I'm looking at, they have or have had at the point at which they posted those particular shoes in stock in my size. Because how many times as consumers have we walked into a retailer and looked at an item that we love only to find out that they don't have it in our size. 79% would reveal personal income in exchange for more personalized service. So I think there's a common misconception in the market that people don't want to give up their data. And I actually think that's true for some of the previous generations. But that Generation Z that we talked about earlier, the ones that are digitally native, are okay giving up more information than folks have had in the past. And part of that is because of this value exchange, because of this quid pro quo. And then lastly, more than a third of consumers are okay or don't even care if retailers share personal information about them to vendors in exchange for more personalized services. Now, I know that may be hard to believe, and it needs to be curated and it needs to be controlled, and it needs to be relevant. But the reality, again, is that if there's some value to a consumer for them sharing their information with you and you sharing their information with somebody else, consumers are likely to do it. It all comes down to what's the compelling story. And a lot of those compelling stories, in many cases now from an innovation perspective, tend to be surrounded around philanthropic initiatives. So people are willing to share their data with a retailer who may share their data with a charity, assuming that that charity gets a benefit. And the benefit to the consumer is that feel good. It's that non-digital identity. So why is all this so hard? Because the truth of the matter is we've been talking about omnichannel for years, and many retailers now have individuals within their organizations who have omnichannel in their title, but yet progress has been relatively slow. So why is that? Well, some of the top inhibitors have been, again, retailers design stores to sell product and not create great customer experiences. That's changing, and I think some stores are doing better than others, but generally speaking, they're focused on merchandising. The analysis paralysis, probably the biggest challenge, right? And it's just, we move too slow in retail. We need to be able to fail fast, and part of failing fast is moving fast. We can't be afraid to try new things, position new things, and learn from these things. People in all industries and every walk of life tend to fear the word failure. But failure doesn't have to be a bad thing. I think failure has always gotten a bad rap, but failure actually is an opportunity to learn and improve. Legacy technology investments, big issue over the past handful of years and moving forward, which is how do we move outside of our massive legacy systems with in-store infrastructure, in particular around POS, and how do we leverage new technologies like mobile technologies and put devices in the hands of associates. And we've actually spent a lot of time over the past couple of years and built a retail associate platform to do exactly that, to allow retailers to leverage mobile technology on top of their existing legacy platforms so that the investment is significantly lower and the time to market is much greater. And so they don't have to worry about replacing all their POS, but yet still can provide the latest and greatest and most efficient, relevant technology to their associates. No single view of the customer. It still exists. Right? Not knowing when I walk in a store what I've bought online and what I've bought at different stores offline. Two of the biggest, though, are this lack of inventory visibility. And so one of the biggest keys behind omnichannel is ensuring that you have access to information to be able to provide a consumer with the item that they need when they want it. So if you go back and think about some of what Don was mentioning earlier in terms of buy online, pick up in store, ship from store, reserve online, pick up in store, all of those require great inventory visibility on the back end. Without great inventory visibility, your chances of creating a dissatisfied customer increase exponentially. And so providing that accurate inventory with safety stock and real-time access is critical across all channels. And then probably the biggest is organizational silos and misaligned metrics. So years ago, I spent a lot of time working with major nonprofits, and nonprofits are a great example as to how retail operates today. Nonprofits had separate groups for managing online donations and offline donations, and those two groups never spoke. And if they did, it was usually because somebody was fighting over how a contribution should be recognized. somebody sent an email and then sent a check-in. Well, who gets credit for that? Or somebody saw an advertisement in the magazine and then donated or received a direct mail flyer and then donated online. Who gets credit for that? And what started to happen is that these crazy fractional allocation models started to be developed, and 5% there if they respond within the first 3 hours, and 70% there if they do it then. And what ended up happening is it just became too difficult to manage until one day these organizations realized that, wait a minute, why do we care where it came from? If we look at it as a top line, bottom line situation, if we're bringing in more money and spending either the same or less than we did before, or even more than we did before, as long as it's proportionate to what our gain is, then who really cares? And retail is now facing the same issue, which is breaking down the barriers between in-store and e-commerce and starting to look at it as total sales and total cost versus online sales versus in-store sales. And that's this proliferation, again, of this omnichannel executive who really owns both. She owns e-commerce, she owns in-store, she owns both. So what can you do to change the game? Integrate product visibility, inventory, and order management across channels. Collapse the silos to allow data to be brought together. Because usually those silos not only create conflict on revenue recognition, they create conflict on access to data. And I'm telling you, retail doesn't need much more data. Utilize tech your consumers use. If your associates aren't using mobile devices, they're behind the times. Consumers now expect associates to have the same technology they do, whether that's simply access to the web, whether that's a advanced or an associate ordering technology that web enables or mobile enables an associate to order product that's not currently located in the store while on the floor, or whether that's a full consumer engagement platform that allows an associate to provide the full spectrum of engagement type services from customer recognition, through loyalty, through in-aisle checkout, you name it, from a device. Think experiences and be fluid. Don't be afraid to adapt. Innovation isn't static. Innovation is evolving. And that, I'd like to turn it back to Don, who will facilitate some questions. Don?
Okay, thanks, David. So we have time for questions, and we have a few in the queue, but there's still time to add yours. So feel free to ask any questions of David you have. And remember that everybody on the call will get an email next day or two with information about how to get the slides. So first question for you, David. What should pure play e-commerce retailers or small to medium-sized retailers be thinking about in terms of disruptive innovation?
Yeah, so again, going back to some of the early things, where smaller to mid-sized retailers are likely to be more cost-conscious focused and don't have a lot of resources to put to it. One of the simplest things to do is around exposing the full set of product that a retailer may have to an associate while in store. So it's this concept of associate ordering. So providing your associates with access simply to the website on their mobile device, so that if a customer comes in looking for a particular shirt or a particular size pants, if that shirt isn't located in a store, the associate can find that on the web, order that for the customer, and have it shipped to home. Or similarly, if the jeans that I'm looking for are available in store but not in my size, the associate can perform the same thing. There's nothing like getting a customer in the store. The chances of conversion in store versus online are significantly higher. And so using the technology together ensures that you don't have a customer who leaves dissatisfied.
Okay, so once we've got the customer in the store, what are the top 3 things that must be done from a store associate's perspective in order to provide an omni-channel experience in store?
Yep, so relevance is one. So providing the consumer with product information or services that are tied to the consumer. So I'll give you a great example. Right? If I bought a jacket and I wasn't happy with that jacket and I called customer service and I complained, in most organizations, in most retailers, that information never filters back down to the associate. And so even if the associate knows that I purchased that jacket, if I walk in store and the associate says to me, "Hey David, how do you like that jacket?" and they don't know that I was unhappy about it, I may go off on a rant for 10 minutes sharing my dissatisfaction. We need to arm the associates with that information to make it more relevant. So one is tying that single view to a customer to an associate. So giving the associate access to that customer data, knowing what they purchased, when they purchased, and then also using the same recommendation engine that you use online in store. So if I log in on the web and I'm seeing 5 products that are specific to me, when I go in store, an associate identifies me and pulls up my profile in store, they should see the same 5 recommendations. So relevance is one. Speed is another. Right? So the idea of long wait times, and go back to the associate ordering example, and you referenced Dick's Sporting Goods in a previous slide. You know, imagine a scenario where I'm in the back of a store, and many of you have visited Dick's Sporting Goods. If you haven't, you know, very large footprint store where it takes minutes to walk from the front with registers to the back. Imagine I'm in the back corner of the store and I find an item, a basketball net that I'd like, and I'm working with an associate and they need to find out whether it's in stock or not. Well, now I have to walk all the way from the back of the store to the front of the store and then get on a register just to identify, in some cases, whether that's available or not. And I'm not using Dick's as an example of that's a problem there, just as an example of the size footprint of store that they have. Well, the chances, the drop-off of a customer from when they identify what they want to walking to the front of the store, determine whether the product is available, is upwards of around 60%. Whereas now putting the information in the hands of the associate to be able to identify right then and there while they're engaged with the customer in the back of the store whether that product is available, and not only whether it's available, but be able to allow them to purchase that without having to go to the front of the store is hugely important. So that's another area. And then the third, I think, is something that there's an opportunity is again connecting the online and offline experiences. So that idea of universal cart. So being able to share items that I put online in store and put in-store items online.
Okay. So to have that kind of omni-channel service, do you need an order management system?
Yeah, you know, order management systems are critical as you start to look at distribution across multiple channels. So, you know, as you look to do things such as ship from store or ship to store or fulfillment from a centralized distribution center like would be done from the web, buy online, pick up in store, reserve online, pick up in store. Yes, an order management system is critical for that because not only is it going to help broker the sale, if you will, it's going to allow you to determine the best location and possibly the cheapest way to get it in home, the fastest way for a customer. And so what you want is an order management system that's smart enough to be able to identify that when a customer places an order for an item, what's the fastest and cheapest way that we can get that product in home for a customer. And so an order management system is critical. And at eBay Enterprise, we have order management systems that service the small, medium, and enterprise customers, and then there are plenty of others in the marketplace that also service that space, but absolutely a critical component for Omnichannel.
Okay, next question. Which process should we follow to be innovative ourselves in developing the retail experience? Do you have any set process in mind?
Yeah, so one, I'm not big on process, but let me change the question a little bit and say, where should we start? And I think where you should start is that innovation is a cultural. It requires organizational buy-in. Because one, if people aren't bought into trying new things, and that goes from the executive level, but actually most importantly at the store level, then it won't succeed. Because I've seen many organizations sit in a boardroom and come up with great innovative ideas, and then move to execute those ideas, only to find out that the people who are actually exposed to those ideas every day, the associates in stores, don't actually like it and can't actually use it. And so that's sort of building a monument to technology that nobody uses. And so the process that I suggest is, one, getting organizational buy-in, but most importantly, getting the buy-in of the store operations people who are engaging with consumers every single day. And I feel like we leave them out of the discussion. But they are the ones who know the customers better than anyone else.
Okay, next question, David. I'm reluctant to fully abandon my point-of-sale system, replace it with one of the more advanced mobile solutions from a cost, training, and reliability perspective. Are there ways to transition from the old to the new, or should the proverbial Band-Aid be ripped off? And I guess that means replace both.
Yeah. So yeah, we recognize the fact that many retailers have made significant investment, and significant investment is not necessarily large amounts of dollars. It's dollars proportionate to what your sales are. And so specifically, I can speak to eBay Enterprise in particular. We recognize that as a need, and so we built a platform that actually services both needs. We built a platform that allows you to provide a mobile experience tied to your existing POS system in any of your existing retail systems. And so you can move into the 21st century with mobile without having to displace your point of sale, your order management, your e-commerce provider, your pricing and promotion system, and so on. But when you're ready, you can also move over to you can disband that if you choose and move to a full POS. So there are absolutely solutions there, and we do recommend for many, unless you're fully committed, to take a crawl, walk, run approach and use a technology similar to our retail associate platform that allows you to stand that up on top of your existing systems.
Okay, next question. You talked a lot about personalization and knowing what the consumer is doing across channels. This question asks, at what point does personalization become creepy?
What point does it become creepy? That's a tough one, because that is very personal, right? What's creepy to one is it may not be creepy to another. I think where it becomes creepy is when you don't allow the consumer to drive the experience. When the machine or the technology drives the experience, meaning you force the customer to engage or you force them down a path, that's when it starts getting creepy. When the technology takes the dominant position versus in what we believe should happen, which is consumers should control the experience. And that's why, again, in solutions that we've done or I've seen others do, for example, the connected glass or even the fitting rooms, the consumer drives that experience. They choose whether or not to activate that by touching the glass or by continuing on. At any time, they can shut that experience down. The minute we stop allowing that, is when it gets super, super creepy.
Okay, next question. Are consumer buying patterns the same in-store and online?
No, not at all. And I think that not only from a product mix perspective, when we've seen that just in look at how dramatic the change in consumer electronics has been over the past decade. A decade, you couldn't drive a mile down the road, or was it 5 miles, and not find a Radio Shack. There was I think the statistic was that there was a Radio Shack within 5 miles of 90% of the U.S. population, or a Best Buy, or a Circuit City. Like, they were everywhere. And now, most consumers, and I think the data speaks to this, buy consumer electronics online. But fashion and apparel, unless it's for a staple item that you know your size, you're buying a replacement of some sort, there's still nothing like going in an in-store and trying it on. Similarly, in-store tends to yield increased average order value because of impulse and because of viewing, whereas online tends to be very targeted. Right? You're searching for an item. Consumers, we talked about earlier, 50% of consumers who go in stores don't know what they want when they go in. That number in terms of online browsing, just window shopping online, is significantly lower. So although online sales it continues to increase, it's still only a fraction of total in-store sales. It's still a very, very small percentage of total retail sales.
Okay, next question. How can we best utilize a mobile application in a retail experience while integrating it into the omnichannel strategy?
Well, so there's two aspects to that, and so I don't know if that's the consumer mobile or the associate mobile. So let's actually take a little different spin on the question and think about from a consumer perspective. Again, we talked about visibility to inventory, and so being able to expose inventory to a consumer on their own mobile app when they walk in store. So one, they can either find the product quickly, identify whether it's in stock, or more importantly, identify if it's not in stock, where it is in stock. Can they have it shipped to their home? Can they go to a different store and pick it up? So that really speaks to that omnichannel view of the product within the consumer app. Similarly, on an associate side, you could argue the same thing, which is giving associates exposure to that same information versus having to go to the red phone on the main desk up front is also helpful. But then, across the omnichannel, being able to start a purchase online, finish it in store, being able to do both a ship to home and a carry out order within the same transaction, the idea of sharing the single view of a customer, all of that information and pushing that out onto the mobile device. I think one of the big questions now for many retailers is the idea of whether it's corporate provided or whether it's a bring your own device. And there's a lot of decisioning that goes into that. And we approach that in ensuring that there's no data that actually is stored locally on any device. And so at any time, if you chose to disable someone, it's easy to do from just locking them out from a username and password, but there's nothing actually on their device that allows them to save that information. By the same token, anyone at any time could write down a piece of information, but that can happen whether it's a corporate owned or a personally owned device. So that's another area where retail just needs to think a little bit about how to deploy mobile in terms of omnichannel stores.
Okay. Next question. Given the advancing role of store associates and the higher demands on them to creatively meet customers' needs, should I be looking for a different type of talent to hire, and should I focus more on training my people?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. And, there are brands today, that historically we have not considered service brands. They're brands where the associates that work in those stores tend to be more focused around either simply checkout procedures or restocking inventory. Brands that historically have not been service focused are becoming more service focused. And so, although I believe that much of the technology that's being used today, and again, from our perspective, the technology we use is very intuitive. So I don't believe necessarily from a technical skills perspective that it needs to be someone different, although again, the younger generations are growing up with the technology, so they're more attuned to using it. I do believe that hiring people that have a greater sense of service and communication will be what separates the successful retailers from the unsuccessful ones. Again, go back to one of the statistics that there's a large percent of the people that would engage a sales associate if the sales associates were armed with the right information. But arming an associate with the right information only gets you so far. They then need to be able to engage in a personalized manner, in a one-to-one manner to be able to connect with that customer. So the short answer is yes. I think more service-focused individuals or people who are committed and have the communication skills and the personal skills required.
Yeah, and a number of big retailers are also raising the pay. I know about a year ago, Gap said they were going to raise the minimum wage in all their stores to $10 an hour this year, specifically because of all the omnichannel responsibilities that were being put on store associates. So
yeah, it's interesting because many retailers have gone from a commission model to a salary model. Yet I wonder whether or not a commission model actually does yield higher engagement because they're going to sort of force them to communicate. The challenge that I think occurs in that model is it becomes almost too fast, right? Is that associates in a commission model, it's all about volume. However, on the flip side, I think the salary model in some cases makes associates somewhat complacent and doesn't push it. So it wouldn't surprise me if we start to see some hybrid type of models. And I know even with the technology that we use, we can provide reporting on an associate's activity in terms of usage and what they're using and how often they're using it, which may also drive incentive, right? So if a person is constantly using the device to engage consumers and evaluate products and read up on products, maybe there's a soft incentive. So maybe there's an additional employee discount, or maybe there's another type of incentive program. So I think that's another area where we might see some innovation, if you will, some disruptive innovation is around the compensation strategies that associates receive in store as engagement becomes even more important.
Right. Yeah, definitely the associate's going to play a bigger and bigger role given the growing place of omnichannel and retailing strategy. Well, we've exhausted all the questions. Thank you, David Geisinger of eBay Enterprise. You covered a lot of ground and had a lot of great insights. And thanks for everyone for attending and for your questions. Hope you all found it useful. Again, everybody will be getting an email next day or two with information about how to access today's slides. So that ends the presentation. Thanks again, and have a great day.